Let's all laugh. Wait, where have they gone? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Regular viewers will be aware that from time to time we all have a jolly good laugh at the Sugars. I think there are around about 26 episodes worth, as I gather up the various idiotic messages that are left by the Sugars, point out what Epsilon Semen morons they are, and come back with some robust responses for your entertainment. This serves a number of purposes. It demonstrates the behaviour of the Sussex squad. It also shows the similarity of the things that they complain about and the ridiculous allegations they make. And it also provides an opportunity for me to dismantle them, much to your amusement. There are thousands of comments that are placed upon my YouTube channel. And therefore, the way that I find the sugar comments are where they use certain keywords or key phrases that we know they regularly indulge in. So, for instance, talking about being racist or racism. That flags. Allegations of being obsessed or you don't know her or leave her alone. They similarly enable me to sweep up the comments, screenshotting them for inclusion in the relevant videos. I don't include every single comment that appears. In some instances, that would mean we would be here for a particularly long time watching the videos. I tend to choose the ones which are the most amusing, and you see the similar pattern that emerges in relation to what they bleat on about. But I've noticed something just recently, something of a sea change, and this is of particular interest. For the last 2, possibly 3 months, I have not seen one sugar comment turn up in the comment section on the basis of those keywords. Now, there might be 1 or 2 that have been dotted around. You might have seen them when you've made a comment. You might have seen 1 or 2 arguing. But they haven't utilised those trigger words, and therefore they haven't come to necessarily my attention. But it is very clear indeed that over that time period, individuals arriving and making allegations of racism, crying about you don't know them, you're obsessed, all of those types of things, it stopped. Beforehand, they would be there nearly every day. There would be a multiplicity of these comments, and I would sweep them up from time to time, and they would find themselves being included in one of the Let's All Laugh at the Sugars videos. That has been going on for years. As I've often explained in conversation, my channel doesn't get as much hatred from them as other people do, and I've suggested this is because I use multisyllabic words, which confuses them. I also think there's a degree of intimidation as a consequence of who I am. We know that there are certain advocates of the Sussexes and members of the Sussex squad which remain prevalent on X. I think that tends to be the main battleground. But it is interesting that on YouTube, in relation to my channel, which is not the largest in the world, but certainly isn't insignificant, and is well known for criticising this one's wife, those sugary comments have completely dried up. It's not that they've slowed to a trickle or an intermittent 1 or 2. There haven't been any whatsoever. Indeed, it was so striking that I only received 1 hostile email from a sugar with the usual incorrect grammar and, funnily enough, spelling her name wrong again. Other than that, nothing. So what does this tell us? Is it the case that they recognise that if they comment on my channel, that they're going to be ridiculed, so they decide not to? Well, that's a possibility, but I doubt it. I don't think that they will necessarily watch those videos. I think they're more likely to focus on the ones that mention this one's wife, and then they have their knee-jerk predictable response. Therefore, the fact that they are humiliated, I don't think necessarily acts as a deterrent. What else might it be? They've got bored and given up? No, that doesn't seem to be the case either. What I think is more likely is as a consequence of two things. In relation to the comments that you would see, you will notice that some are clearly written by a human being. And those ones have dried up because I think that there are members of the Sussex squad who have become increasingly delusioned with this one's wife, have started to recognise that she is an unpleasant individual and that she isn't the queen that they had hoped for. And thus, whilst they might still support her, they've given up on being an advocate for her. They've given up fighting at the front line for her. And therefore, the human versions that put forward these insults and the ridiculous comments have, in effect, dried up. It's also the case that many of these comments were quite clearly generated by bots. And certainly the case with regard to the standard phraseology. That was evident, they were. And you also notice with the bots that if you were to make a point back at them, you invariably didn't get any further response from them. It was like they just simply shut down. Or, if a response came, it bore no resemblance to what you had just explained to them, further underpinning the fact that it was a bot that had written it. And therefore it would seem to me that there has been a significant reduction in bot activity on the part of this one's wife. Could this be that she has decided that it's not an appropriate way to try and extend her popularity and to cause people to fight on her behalf? Could it be, of course, that she can no longer afford to do so? That there's a tightening of the old purse strings, which means that it's not such a viable option for her to utilise through another agency the use of those bots. It won't be a case of her suddenly finding a conscience and thinking, shouldn't be doing this. It's more likely that either it's been deemed ineffective or there isn't the money to keep it going. But what I do say to you is, it's stark and clear. For the last 2 to 3 months, I've noticed that there has not been any comment from these sugars, whether they're human or bots, in the comment section with their traditional squawky cries. I think you should take heart from that. Those of you that are sensible, that go to the evidence, that form a viable view in relation to her behaviour, that the fact that these comments have disappeared shows that you're prevailing. We know they haven't gone away completely. There are still plenty of people on X, of course, which is a particularly toxic place. And you see the odd comment here and there below the line and say on Facebook. But what one does witness is that in increasingly many places, those voices of support, stroke dissent, in relation to the Sussexes are fewer and fewer. A further indication, perhaps, that the tide has turned. What do you think? What have your experiences been? Are you finding them just as much as before? Or do you agree that you've seen less of them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.